In today's episode of Monsters, we are going to be doing the first boss effect, which is the Stomp Shockwave. Let's get started. We have two effects we need to implement. One's going to be a shockwave effect when Mo stomps, and I'm going to get that from this Effects, Textures and Prefabs by Magic Pot Inc. I'm going to download that into Unity. And the other is a projectile, so a fireball or an ice ball that's going to be thrown by Mo when we're a certain distance away, and I'm going to get that from this 52 special effects pack by Gaff. I'm going to go ahead and import those into Unity. If you bring in the 52 special effects pack, what you will notice is there is a legacy issue here where the script is using the old GUI text, and actually what you want is just text. And to fix this, you go using UI even, and that should get rid of any compile errors that you have. So if you give this a second to compile, that's gotten rid of that. I'm going to find a prefab that represents a shockwave, which is here, and then I'm going to assign that to Mo. Bring that over there. Materials here have to be converted. I'd imagine they're all going to be pink. Yep. So we'll do a select all, go into edit, render pipeline, and then upgrade selected project materials, and go to proceed. Okay, and that's fixed that. So now if I go into this, kind of got something that looks like a shockwave. I'll change the lifetime to 1. I will change the start size to 50, so they're a bit bigger. And if we just preview that, okay, or looking slightly more reasonable. I'll add a brand new script. Let's go new script, and I'll go boss AI. Sounds menacing. So add a boss AI script. First thing I'm going to do is create some references. One for the animator, and we'll call this boss animator. We will get a reference to the particle system that represents the shockwave. So we can say shockwave particle system. We'll need the distance to the player, because a lot of our decisions on what we do is based upon that distance to player. And then make another distance variable, and this one can be public, so I'll chuck it up here, and we'll call this distance for stomp. And the idea behind this variable is when you get inside this distance, the Mo's gonna stomp at you, as in you're too close. And our state machine can be called boss AI, or no, excuse me, boss, the states that the boss can be in. So the first one, the idle, if I spell that right. The next one can be state stomp. Next one can be state throw. So this is when he's throwing a projectile. And we'll have a state, an interim state called waiting. And that's in between moves. And we'll have one for dead. State dead. And this is when the AI gets stopped. We'll call this state. And we'll set this to idle. One of the goals that I like to do is get my code to look as close as possible to an English sentence as I can, and I think that reads better. The state word here is redundant. To me, that reads more clearer, or just it's less superfluous that way. We'll make a countdown timer. So I'm going to call this time between stomps, I guess. And the idea behind this, I'll set this to 5, and this is a seconds. So this is going to be done in a coroutine. So we'll go enumerator, and we'll go Stomp Shockwave. So this will play the animation and it will create a shockwave as well. And the reason why it's an enumerator is if you think about the jump animation, you don't want to play the shockwave at the same time that the jump starts. So you jump up in the air, and as you're coming down, at that point the shockwave should kick in. So there is a bit of a time delay in between the animation starting and the shockwave triggering. Now you could do this with an animation event, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it via code using this the yield method, which is just allows you to pause. Let's set these internal variables. So the boss animator will get component, and we'll say the animator, which is down there. Okay, that takes care of that. And then we need to get the particle system that represents the shockwave. So we want to set the shockwave PS variable. And now let's think about the structure of what we have in our code. So if we come back here, we're at this, we're here, the script's on this level. So we need to get the shockwave, and then we need to get the child of the shockwave. And we'll use a find. Go transform dot find. I'll use find because if we end up reshuffling the structure of the boss, then we don't have to worry about the code. So I believe it was called shockwave. It was called shockwave. That's good. Okay, and then we'll do get child. We'll get the first child, and then we'll get the component of the first child, the particle system. Okay, so that in theory should give us the two things that we need for this attack. So we'll say boss animator dot set trigger. I forget what the name was. We'll wait a certain period of time. So this is why this needs to be a enumerator. So we'll say return. Let's wait a second and let's see what that gives us. In fact, this maybe should be done as a public variable, so we can adjust from the inspector. Int animation time offset. Not a great word. But if I think of something better, I will come back and change it. And if I could spell, that would be very, very useful. It's 2 words. So let's put that in there and put that there. Okay. So we will wait for 2 seconds and then we will play the shockwave particle system. So we'll say play. Okay, stomp, just like we did with good old Bart. And let's call an update. Let's make an update state function that controls the state machine. So we'll call this update state. So we'll go, the first thing we want to do is make our distance to player. And we'll go vector3 dot distance. So let's calculate the distance between and of course what I didn't do was make a reference to the player. Let's call this player, and then in our reference section, we will say, so to set player, we'll go game object, find object with tag player. We can say player dot transform dot position, and then the transform dot position of mo. And the next thing I want to do is go transform dot look at. So wherever we move, however we kind of move around, the mo should always face the player. Okay, and then if we're inside that distance, so distance to player is less than, what do we call it, distance for stomp. If that's true, then we will change the state to be state dot stomp. That's what I called it. We need to actually process that state. So if we say stomp, okay, let's just set that up to right. All good, I think. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this public so we can actually adjust this. It makes sense to make this make this so hard coded. So time between stomps, and then I need an actual timer that actually counts down, because this I haven't got enough variables right now. So let's say no, what am I doing? Float countdown timer. Okay, and now I can take that countdown timer, and now I know I've begun a stomp, so I need to set this value to be the time between stomps. So we're going to start our wait, start coroutine, and then we can initiate our Stomp Shockwave, which is that guy there. Okay, and so now we go into the waiting state. So all we're doing here is waiting for the animation to finish. I appreciate that actually talking about this may not be the clearest way of explaining it, but when we get to testing this, and you can see this hopefully working in a visual way, it becomes slightly clearer than what it must do with me waffling on. Okay, so then we take our countdown timer in our waiting state, and we remove the time between the last frame. And we check if we've reached 0. If countdown timer is less than or equal to 0, we simply take our state back to the idle state. And now we're at a clean state where we can reinitiate this if we need to. Be useful if I stay consistent. A, if I stay consistent with my naming convention, and B, if I actually use this, since I went through all the trouble of making it. Let's take stock of what this code is trying to achieve. We start off in the idle state. If we're in the idle state and the player is close enough for us to do a stomp action, we change our state to be stomp. In the stomp, we're going to set our countdown timer, as in this represents how long we're going to give that stomp action to complete before we decide to do something else. We start the shockwave animation by calling this method, which simply sets the trigger to be stomp, waits for 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds it plays the shockwave particle system. Then what we do is we go into the waiting state, which is an interim state. Essentially we're waiting for this countdown now to become 0. And we do that in here, which is going to continue to count down for 5 seconds. So you should see 5 seconds, and then you go back into idle. That sounds fantastic in theory. Let's see if it actually works. And so if I get underneath 5, because I changed it to 5, it should start the jump animation there. Okay, You did see a shockwave, but it was way too soon. Yes, right, so you are seeing that. Fine. So what I need to do in that case is if I go back into Mo, let's give this, if I increase this offset now, it should be 3 seconds after starting the jump animation that particle system plays. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Yeah, all right. But it doesn't really look like a shockwave. Even when I play it in the preview, it really doesn't look good. It doesn't look like the ground is shaking, which is what I'm kind of going for. We bring this number down. Let's keep your eye on this area here, and hopefully the problem becomes clearer. So if I go restart, right, it disappears. Do you see? Let's do that one more time. Just keep an eye. Watch how the shockwave kind of disappears. Okay, it's being culled. So the sorting layer is on the default, and I don't want it to be on the default because that's the issue right now. So I'm going to add a brand new layer, and I'm going to call this shockwave. And in theory, if I assign the particle system to be on that layer, let's bring that into shockwave. Okay, so now fingers crossed. Okay, now you can kind of see the whole thing. That kind of looks like a shockwave. And also, this actually has a delay, so I didn't really need to write all that. Though, if I bring the lifetime up, it should slow down the shockwave effect, and it does. So if 3, it becomes even slower. I think 3 is going to be too slow, but 2 might be the Goldilocks version. That might be the one that's just right. So let's see, it's going to jump up. Yeah, if I had 3, 3 looks okay. I'm going to watch out for this countdown timer, and after the first jump, I'm going to make sure that there is at least 5 seconds before the second jump. Start the stomp. Right, so there's the stomp. Okay, and then now. So that as soon as it starts, you've got 5 seconds, and then after 5 seconds, there. So that countdown timer is working. The next part of this is to actually have that stomp affect the player. We will calculate the distance to the ground when we first start. So we'll say distance to ground, set that to 0, it's a value. Now for this, we're going to say get the collider. So we'll go capsule collider, like that, and then we'll get the bounds, get the length and the extent of the Y direction. So that will tell us how far away we are off the ground. The pool is on ground equals, we go physics, so now we're going to cast array, so we go physics dot raycast and our current position, so we say transform dot position, and we're going to shoot this vector in the down direction or the negative up direction, as it's also known. Then we're going to fire that at distance to ground plus just a very small value. Okay, so this will return whether that ray hits something or not. So we can say return is on ground. Call our is on ground method, touching ground check. True, I am on the ground, and then when I press the spacebar, false. True and false. So jump false, sets to false. So I'm just going to say player script. I can say, right, if player script dot touching ground check returns true, so we are on the ground, then I can say player script dot hit, and then this I'm going to store in a variable. We'll say damage for stomp. So damage for stomp, and we want to set this to be relatively high. Stomp should be quite a powerful maneuver. Right, so damage for stomp can be set to 20, and then that should initiate all the animation stuff for the player. I did not actually set this, did I? No. So player script equals player dot get component. I would say player. Right, okay. And that should avoid the error message we were about to get. So we'll get hit. Yep, down to 80, and then after 5 seconds, I won't get hit. You just see that effect. Cool beans. To finish off with some sound effects, and I'm going to go back into Universe Sound Free Pack. I'm just going to grab the rest of these. So let's head over to Mo. Let's add an audio source. So we'll go audio source. I'm going to go with blow. Blow. And set that to the audio clip. I don't want to wake on play. And audio source. So we'll go audio source. Let's call it audio source. And then we'll have a function that plays stomp sound. And again, very similar to what we've done before. We'll just go audio source. It's equivalent to false. So if it's not playing, we will play the sound effect. We'll say audio source dot play, and it's, at this point it should be a case of simply calling this function. Yep. Alright, so since I've called it Shockwave there, I'm just going to call this Shockwave 2. There's Shockwave sound, just so it kind of stays consistent. So let's give the audio source a value. So we'll say audio source equals get component audio source. The other thing I want to do is change the background music, because the background music is exactly the same as it was in the previous level in my game manager, and we'll set that to be that player. Play that. The music's quite appropriate, and now this time. Hey, not bad. I'll try that again. Cool. To finish off, I've come back and added some comments to the code to keep things nice and readable, and that will do it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.